to welcome you all for this webinar on seismic activity in Champhai District, Mizoram, experiences and initiatives. And as you know that we are organizing this program in collaboration with NEBU, and many of us are already aware that Champhai District in Mizoram is facing a lot of activities, seismic activities for quite some time. And if you see at national level, we are passing through definitely a tough phase when besides Corona, besides this COVID disease, we are having various cascading disasters are impacting at national level. The various disasters which have impacted us in recent times, in recent months, include floods in several parts, cyclones on the both coasts, east and west, landslides in various parts of Kerala, Jammu and Kashmir, and Maharashtra. Then urban flooding has taken its withdrawal route. You can understand that urban flooding is definitely posing a big challenge at national level. Then fires are taking place, and the biggest thing is that earthquakes are happening on regular basis. So you see that regular occurrence of earthquakes have caused a major challenge at national level. And as far as Mizoram events are concerned, Mizoram is facing smaller events for almost 2 months or more. And the largest event, the panelists may correct me, we have faced few days back on August 27th, 5.4 magnitude. And due to these events, various buildings and a lot of scare has been created in the region. And buildings have faced some damages as well, including two churches. And people are really scared in that region. Government of Mizoram have already taken several initiatives in this direction. So, in this context, we are organizing this webinar to discuss more about this activity in Champhai District. And as far as earthquakes are concerned, earthquakes are really one of the most destructive natural disasters. They may occur at any time with sudden impact and with no or little warning. And when earthquakes are occurring, they destroy the built environment, including your buildings, everything, including your life support system, including your electric network, communication network, your transportation network. Almost everything is impacted by big earthquakes. And earthquakes have the capacity to destroy the entire economy of the nation. So they can destabilize the countries or the regions. As far as seismicity is concerned, Devesh Walia sir is going to talk a lot, a full presentation on this event about the seismicity in that region, northeast region, special reference to Mizoram. But as far you know that earthquakes are happening all over the country, and if you see that in last century, many earthquakes have already taken place in northeast region. The last big one, which resulted in severe damage, was in Manipur in 2016, and a lot of damage has already taken place. Professor Kaushik has already worked on different aspects of that earthquake, so we request him to share his experiences on about that earthquake as well. So in this webinar, we are going to discuss seismicity of Northeast India with the special reference to Mizoram. Then what is happening and what are the field observations of activities in Champhai District. Then initiatives of taken by state government to reduce the impact of whatever scare has already been built up by these events which are happening in that region. And then Professor H.V. Kaushik is going to give a road ahead how to mitigate the impact of earthquakes in northeast region. Not only Mizoram, but the entire region is highly vulnerable, highly hazard prone. So a lot of exposure is already there. So he is going to give us the roadmap for mitigating the impact of earthquakes in that region. So this is the brief program for today's thing. So with this brief introduction, as I told, Executive Director NIDM is supposed to inaugurate this program, but due to certain exigencies and some official business in the office, he is not able to join right now. But he has promised to join towards the end of the webinar. So let's start directly with Professor Devesh Walia. Professor Devesh Walia is with NEHU, the Department of Environmental Sciences, and he is basically MTech in geology and PhD in geological sciences. So he is working in this area for quite some time. He is a valued partner of NIDM for quite some time, and he has contributed a lot in many spheres, and he is one of the pioneers who is studying this event in Mizoram for quite some time, and we are discussing all these events for quite some time, and he's the man behind to encourage us to take up this webinar to make it public what are the developments in that region, because many people are not aware of what is happening exactly there. So with this brief introduction, I request Professor Devesh Walia to take over and talk about the seismic risk or seismicity of the region with a special reference to Mizoram. So this is your turn, Professor Walia. I think there are some issues with Walia sir. So Laldin Puya, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready, sir.
Okay, so you can start your presentation on field observation of activities in Champhai District.
Okay, thank you.
Please
Thank
go
you
ahead.
so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to give an opportunity to share my experience about the field observations about seismic activities in Champhai District. I'm happy. I'm also happy because I can share a good chance about my experience over here. So thanks to NIDM and NEHU for giving me an opportunity to share. So that my topic is field observations on activities in Champhai District. First, let me remind you that about the seismicity of Mizoram. In Mizoram, during this year, you have failed 21 times according to National Center for Seismology data. So, so far here, I put only some data only from 21st June onwards. Yeah, you can see that the table here. Here, this one is the Mizoram map prepared by Mirsak, our friends. Here you can see that this one is Aizawl, the state capital of Mizoram, and Champhai district is this eastern borders. This side is Myanmar side, and next to Champhai towards this western part is Khozol district, and another one is Serchhip district. Those earthquakes was felt by these three districts especially, but today you focus in this Champhai district because most of that severe earthquake effects occur here in these regions only. Let me circle this here. In this region only, so in close view, let us see here. There is two rivers, Tipi River, sometimes in structurally called Tipi Fault. This side here, and another one is Teo River. This Teo River is in the Myanmar border. So between this area, from NCS, National Center for Seismology and data, you can see that here most of the seismicity occur in these regions only. So from this data, you can see the difference of depth. Earlier, you believed that the frequent earthquake here in Champhai district may be earthquake zone, but when you examine this different depth, so that may be due to something tectonic causes. So from the field observations, you believe that this seismicity is more due to these minor faults and lineaments around here, and you may know that here in this eastern border, from this side is Churachampur, this Manipur side. Here there is a fault called Churachampur Mao fault, northeast or southwest directions. And here you may see that there is a mud fault around here. east-west directions. So there are two big faults. You can say there is major faults, two major faults around here. But in this time, most of these earthquakes occur here along this area. So when you see that magnitude, so from that ISO side, what you think is that you may also hear, you may feel this frequent earthquake, but you can only feel these two earthquakes, two, three earthquakes. This 21st June earthquake, 22nd June earthquake, and 17th July earthquake. So 21st June is not affect much about in Mizoram so far, no record nearby epicenter. So 22nd June onwards is very important for Mizoram. What we think is that. So from here, some villagers that when I call them or during a visit, DDK correspondents say that they hear 110, about 110 earthquake shape tremors here in these regions. So that instrumentation is also important because lack of seismometer around here. That maybe you may also not know, you cannot hear, you cannot know the exact natures of this frequent seismic activity here in Champhai District. So let us go to our observations. First, let us see about the ground cracks. You observe about 10 ground cracks. So different orientations, but not much different. Difference in means of the size and the length only. Here that's a very small weight and here weight in. Here you can see that there's a small opening, then a very long type. And in this village also very long an open ground cast was observed. So you measure about approximately 300 meters like this in different locality. This one locality only, and you also observe this type of ground cracks in the open forest. So you may see that these situations. And the one interesting about these ground cracks is more or less same directions. Mostly the directions is near parallel to nearby stream and or river. So most northeast, southwest directions, and some this village east to west directions. So these are important because that this may be caused after this nearby stream or near lineaments that this village also close to epicenter too. Here there are two openings in that village also. You examine and investigate this thoroughly. And you will know that in every earthquake, it happens landslide. So at least 4 magnitude also can induce landslide. So according to Kiefer and Rodriguez approach also, you also examine that earthquake induced landslide. That's very similar with those approach and database before in the world. They collect what they collect is. So when you examine, compare with those approach and database is more or less same. Anyway, let us see. Most of these landslides occur along the roadside, cutting slope, and different types of failure is there. Translational type of failures, mostly soil slide and toppling of rocks, rock falls, wedge failure are very common here in Champhai District. You report about 10 to 15 landslide, but it's small scale. And the important points here in the effects in about earthquake is building performance. So let us see that different buildings effects mostly affects that column structures, which are salt column, and The most common type is this type, that this one is column and this one is beam, and that's brick wall. And brick wall and column joint failure is very, very common. And collapse of brick wall and cracks. This type of damage are very common in Champhai District. And here you can see that the damage in shear wall and column wall, then this one is the school, and you can see that the vulnerability and risk of the children, the students of the school. And one is important to know that in this school also, this recent voting count is held here. So that's very amazing. Then here you can also see that column and brick wall cracks over here. And you can see that these failures of the structures, column structures and short columns bulging, and such type of different types of building failures is common. And that remind you, this type of open ground story are mostly affected because that you can see that that shaking seismic wave that due to that seismic wave, these are very, very vulnerable with regard to earthquakes. So these are very when you examine, when you investigate the areas, the village, I am along with structural engineer at the particular place. You speak to the owners along with the village leaders. You recommend how to repair and what will be the causes of this damage. You explain everything in details at institute. And another one what you observe is property damage and domestic animal also affect here falling down of goods in the shop and killed of domestic animals and damage of television sets. I report about 16 television sets are damaged due to these frequent earthquakes. So very recently, on 27 August, 20 this last week only, so you felt four tremors. The first one, that's 27 August at the time of around 5:37 p.m. This is the day of the village council and local council election day. So in the Champhai district also, that election is also held. The counting agencies, polling officers, and those who are in the queue of voters also, they panic. They run out from the polling of the area, so they are panic because that magnitude is 5.3 and followed by 3.6, 4.1, and 3.7 till 29 August. But again, that from when I go to every village, every leaders, I call to them, I ask them what about the natures. They say that about 30 to 40 houses are damaged or are affected, I mean, like this. And some brick walls are collapsed, like here you can see that. And again, the brick wall cracks and structural failures and falling down of ceiling and open ground cracks. This is a very long time. I put only very short one. You can imagine how, the widening of this earthquake develops open ground cracks, and small slide also observed from 27 August earthquake. And you also examine, you investigate heritage sites because Champhai district is rich in our cultural heritage, Mizoram cultural heritage. So let me show two sites. And one is Liancheri Lung and Tlang. Liancheri is a girl, lady, and sit here to look her boyfriend. Champhai is a hotel here. She sits here, and the view a good viewpoint here, and it's made up by sandstone bedded, jointed bedded. So you examine thoroughly the rock strength and the rock altitude, and because that there is cracks over here, joint spacings. I mean, so you recommend, you suggest filling this joint spacing using cement like that. Here you can see another heritage site, a very, very beautiful one. This one is Trasiama Senolina. Trasiama is a man, his Mithun used to carve over here. This one is about 12-meter high from the ground. So this one is another site, a beautiful site. And another side, there is a step prepared by our state tourism department. So from here you can climb over and can examine the natures of the top of this hotel-like structure. So here you imagine that this is a folktale, but it is impossible for him to climb over here, because according to these detailed structures and natures of these rock strata, rock beddings, when you examine. But anyway, this is a photo. It's a very beautiful place. One day, please visit here, and you analyze all that rock strata behaviors, and using dynamic analysis. Then you recommend how to strengthening of these beautiful heritage sites. Okay, one important point is that you may see that from the data given you in the previous one in the table, there are frequent earthquakes over here in Champhai District. So the people also explain, report 110, about 110 so far earthquake tremors they felt. So that's why people are very, very panic. During nighttime, they stay in the outside, in the nearby playground and near their residence building. So they will construct temporary shelters, mostly constructed by village disaster management committee, like different types of shelters are they construct. Every village they construct. In Champhai district, there are 47 villages. 30 villages are affected by these recent earthquakes. Let me conclude my presentations. 22nd June earthquakes with subsequent tremors severely affect 30 villages in Champhai district. Mizoram, people of 6 villages hear explosion sound just before jolting, and due to this earthquake, it developed about 10 ground cracks, and directions are mostly southeast, northwest directions. Not northeast to southwest, west northwest to east southeast, and which are nearly parallel to nearby stream and river. And in those landslides are small slide with different types I already explained. And about 360 buildings, including government buildings, are affected. This government includes a school building, a Ganwadi center, health centers. So some are very minor and some are very severe damage. And a very recent earthquake, 27 August earthquake in affect 37 buildings from 3 villages. And when you investigate the area, you observe that traditional type of some type buildings and engineers, RCC structures are observed less intensity, which the part that affect intensity is more are unengineered mostly and open ground story like that, and materials they use are not up to the mark. But luckily, no human casualty. Well, about 40 domestic animals were killed. And you recommend installation of seismometers and to prepare seismic assassinations and building regulations implementations are very and most required here in Champhai District, Coastal District, and Sensitive District. You have, here in Aizawl only, you have building irrigation. So I am from the team of geologists and engineers, joint investigation team. So you have prepared a report, a big report, and as previous I talked, you have discussed thoroughly and explained what is the nature of this earthquake and how it happens. You explain everything in details in every village with village leaders like this, and you also explain everything and how to repair like that. You explain everything to the owners at the time, at a particular time, at a particular place. Like then we will submit our report to Disaster Management Minister Pulau Samdiana and Chief Secretary and respective MLA for further actions. So anyway, Mizoram is a beautiful place. Most of the village settle up the hill. So one day, please visit and enjoy the beauty and nature, the beauty of this beautiful nature of Mizoram. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Dr. Lal and Priya. It's a wonderful presentation. You had taken us to the field and have shown some pictures and damage pattern, cracks in the ground, and all these things. So thank you so much. And I will raise a few questions towards the end. So Professor Deveshwali, are you ready?
Now, basically, we have heard Pu Laldan Puya, who has done a lot of RBS screening and such work in the area which is of concern. So basically, we know that this is the area where convergence is going on, and especially in the eastern margin. So we need to be a little cautious. We need to be studying it in more detail. Yeah, go to the next. So basically, understanding the whatever is the tectonic activity is very important. You can understand that if we preempt any of the damages, any of the activity, at least it will help in reducing the damage. That's what is the important aspect is there, because these tectonic activities, they pose real threat to the civilization and to the development in the region. Next. Basically, northeastern part especially is very prone to earthquakes, and it is very prone to earthquake hazard especially, and it is one of the highest rates in the world. And basically, you can understand that normally we talk of the earthquakes in the north-south convergence zone, but east-west convergence zone is equally important. Next. And there have been many earthquakes in this zone. You can see that in India, whatever earthquakes occurs, out of them, around 50% of the earthquakes, they occur in this zone, because we know that this is the zone of convergence, and convergence is taking place not only in the north-south direction, but also in the east-west direction. And because of which, these convergences, the earthquakes, they keep coming in this region. Just tell me, go to the next, please. Next. Yeah. On the basis of occurrence of earthquakes, there are many such UNDP and other organizations, they are working, and they have located some important because of the zone of convergence, they have located some important zone of shortening. You can understand that, see, when the Himalayas, they get shortened, then whole of the Himalayas, they have given rise to whole of the Himalayas, they have arisen after 50 million years of age or so, and it is demarcated at the boundary by the main boundary thrust, central crystalline thrust, and some of the thrusts are there. Thrust means when one plate goes beneath the other plate. So similar, those thrusts have been studied in great detail, because it passed over a very long distance, and it is the people, they are living in that zone. Whereas the similar zones are existing in the eastern part, towards Mizoram, Manipur, and these regions also, but the density of the population studied. So you can understand that we have got similar zones which are there, and even we have got a zone of volcanics which is there. Yes. Next slide, please. So the Geological Survey of India has carried out detailed geological work. You can see that when you go further east from Aizawl, then there is a zone where Oligocene rocks are there, which are the basement rocks which are present there, these basement rocks, and these rocks are of importance because these are formed under the flysch and the mollusk sedimentary facies. Actually, these rocks, they are, as I was telling you, that under the deltaic zone, so they are the intercalation of arginaceous and the arenaceous material. Yeah, next please. Not only these, the zone which is in India is of seismically important, but the zone which is further east of India in Burmese region also is very, very important, and there have been so many of the earthquakes have been occurring in that region. You can see that from the Burmese geological sciences, they have plotted this map and they have shown even up to the Shillong Plateau. But the important thing is that the important structures, they are having the meridional trend, means north-south trend, and they are converging towards the west. So this is indicative of that the western part is going beneath the eastern part of the plate. That's what is of importance, that because the convergence indicates, the arcuate shape indicates, and the convex shape which is towards the west, it indicates that the Indian part is going beneath the Burmese plate. Yeah, we can come to the next. Similarly, there have been the plotting of the material of the rocks. You can see that if we go further east from Mizoram area, then we can see some of the rocks which are the basement rocks. So we can understand that the basement rocks are exposed further east, but whatever material is generated in the recent times, in the tertiary times, that material gets accumulated, gets stopped when the movement of the Indian plate is beneath the Burmese plate, then it gets accumulated, and that's where the tectonic activities, they are getting generated. You can go to the next. So we know that this seismicity, whatever seismic activities are there, they are not haphazard. They will not occur anywhere. They are basically correlated with the major tectonic structures and the lineaments. What Laldin Puya has shown, that some of the faults, they have done even the cracking on the surface of the earth. Such are the indications that those earthquakes are generated due to the faults, but those faults or the thrust zones are not coming to the surface, but they remain beneath the surface of the earth, and they are coming out to the surface only through some indications. Otherwise, if earthquake comes like this, even of 5.3 magnitude, it may bring in the vertical movement of minimum 1 to 2 meters on the surface. So if the surface has not gone down by 1 to 2 meters, it means these are the hidden earthquakes which are beneath the surface, which needs to be understood. Next. Needs to be ascertained also. So basically, once the Indian plate is there, you can see here the plate which is riding is the Burmese plate, and the plate which is going beneath or subducting is the Indian plate. So now it is locked. Now because of this locking, as the plate is putting some forces, so some of the earthquakes are generating. So actually we don't know precisely that in which phase of this locking we are, but we need to be very cautious, because otherwise we may be caught unprepared if a major earthquakes more than 5.5 magnitude occurs. Yes, next please. So basically what is happening, that major convergence is there in the north-south. This is very, very important thing which we need to understand, that the major convergence is towards the north-south, because from the southern side, the new crust has been generated. So whole of the Indian plate is pushing towards the Eurasian plate. But what happens that as there is not much pressure, and as the load of the Eurasian plate is very, very high, because it has already gone too much high, so the locking is much more stable. So when the plate is pushing further from the towards the northern side, what happens that because the locking is more, so now it has taken a turn towards the anti-clockwise, and that's why this east-west convergence is very, very important, which has started after the closing of the north-south convergence. And what is happening that these structures, they are very, very complicated structures. It is giving rise to. Yes, please, next. This convergence, you can see that when the Indian plate collides with the Eurasian plate, then it has given rise to the higher plateaus of not only of Meghalaya or Shillong, but of the Tibetan region also. And you can see that those higher plateaus, they are towards the southern side or southeastern sides, they are just closing down. So this is what is indicative of the collision of the Indian plate. Yes, please go ahead. Yes. And we all know that the region is very, very active. The important thing is that we have got lot many earthquakes in this region, and which are linked to the crustal flow. As I told you that the Indian plate is colliding with the Eurasian plate. As if collides, on the surface, they give rise to the faults and all in the solid rocks, but the mantle also undergoes such a collisional tectonics, so it flows. So when it flows, then please go to the next slide, then it may give rise to some earthquakes which are shallow focus. And such studies using the magnetotelluric, it has been carried out, which says that the crustal flow is going on from the northwest to the southeast part. You can see by white lines the crustal flow is there. All right, and it is by studying up to from 0 to 100 kilometers depth, such crustal flows are seen. Yeah, by using the magnetotelluric studies. Yeah, go to the next. Yeah, this is what it is showing, the crustal flow. This is what is a model which says that the crustal flow is there. Now as per this model, the crustal flow is shown with a yellow color towards the east of Mizoram area. But actually this area is not yet studied. So that's what basically we don't know. But we presume because there is a presence of volcanics in this zone, so that may be the reason for the crustal flow passing through the Myanmar area. But this crustal flow may be beneath the Indian region or beneath the Manipur and Myanmar region near the Sagyang fault. Yes, please. Next. Yeah. So to understand, as I told you that we undertook the magnetotelluric studies. These are the studies using the electromagnetic induction of the earth. We know that these electromagnetic waves which passes through the earth, they get distracted or they get changed because of when they pass through some of the media, depending upon the electric field properties of the media. Yes, please. Next. So yeah, so these are the waves which can be used to configure the surface of the earth. As I told you that along the Indo-Tibetan region, such studies are carried out. So we have carried out in some parts of Mizoram, which is marked by red in this figure. We can go to the next, please. And we have carried out the work in the region where Aizawl to Champhai, the area is there. So you can understand that we can understand that. Yeah, one second. There is some problem. Yeah, so just there is some technical problem with the connection. So what has happened, that what he was showing, our Poor Laldinpuya. So what Poor Laldinpuya was showing. So we can see that the Mat fault is one of the fault which is important fault, which is located by the surfacial mapping only. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. So they are by a superficial mapping only, but there are lot many other smaller faults in the area which do play important role, because in this area the surface, the faults are not coming up to the surface. Now one important thing is there. You can go to the next. The important thing is there that this whole Mizoram area is getting compressed from the east-west direction. So we chose in the direction of the transpose of the Indian plate our sampling sites or our data recording sites. Go to the next. Yeah. So these are the sites which were undertaken for the study. These are the 12 sites which have been undertaken from one end of the Mizoram, from the Mizoram Tripura border, Rajiv Nagar, to the other end, which is Mizoram Myanmar border. Champhai. So we have carried out the studies. So just go to the next. Yeah. So this region, because there are lot many lightning activities are there because nearness to the tropics of Cancer. But we have carried out the study to a very reasonable, good study has been carried out. Yeah, come to the next, please. And at all those 12 sites, we prepared the one-day layered model. And those 12 sites, 1D model indicates the different structure which is there beneath the surface of the Earth, up to from 1 kilometer, from 3 kilometers up to around 60-65 kilometers depth. Yeah, go to the next. And this is the actual model which is there. So you can understand that from this model, that the thickness of the sediments, as you are moving towards the east, is increasing, the thickness of the sediments. And second thing is, as the thickness of the sediments is increasing, the older rocks are also getting exposed as you go towards the east. That's what is the Oligocene rocks or the Barrel rocks which are there. Now, these Barrel rocks have been the site for oil and gas deposits in the northeast. So one important thing is that as the compression is more, so there is a lot of scope of these oil and gases to move out. That also may be one of the reasons for giving such a seismicity. That's what is very, very important for us to understand. Because as the pressure is more, we can understand that more amount, because these rocks are formed under the flysch facies and the molasse facies at the border, means they are the deltite rocks. As they are the deltite rocks and arginaceous and arenaceous rocks, there are a lot of pore spaces are there. And the compression from the western side is increasing towards the eastern side. Because of this compression, all these materials may be flowing out and these rocks must be adjusting to it. So that also may be one of the reasons for giving rise to such earthquakes. That's what we need to understand. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. Once this compression is there, it shows that there are some resistive features, and there are on the surface there may be lot many anticlines and synclines, or antiforms and synclines may be, synforms may be there, but beneath there are 4 antiforms and synforms are there. And because of the convergence, what is happening, that convergence due to the eastward drift of the Indian plate, it is giving rise to even the Arakan-Joma suture zone also. And these sedimentary layers, they are increasing in the thickness as we move towards the Champhai area. Yes, go to the next. So with this we can just map them, and we can understand that this part of the Indian plate is working as a wedge, and as it is working as a wedge, the chances of such earthquakes, they are more. But only thing is that if it has crossed the critical limit, then their chances of occurrence of major earthquakes are also cannot be avoided. Their chances are there. Just go to the next. So these blocks are there, which are dewatered metasedimentary rocks, and as they are further dewatering, the chances of their such destabilizations are becoming more and more. Yes, go to the next, please. In our place, it is raining very, very heavily, because of which the connection has gone very, very slow today. So we can see that further east, if you go, there is a presence of a fault zone, and that fault zone is indicative of the Indian plate boundary or Sagyang fault, which is present towards the east. Yes, please. So there have been a lot of studies, even by ONGC, by GSI, and all those people. ONGC, while studying, they found that the thickness, as we move towards the east, the thickness is reducing. Whereas we, through our studies, we have found that the thickness of the rock beds is increasing. So if by chance, if what we say that the thickness of the sediments is increasing as we go towards the east, then the probability of these pore spaces and all getting compressed and releasing of the energy, it means less risk is there. But if we follow the model given by the ONGC, then it means it is the plate boundary, and that plate boundary, and as the rocks which are beneath are the volcanics or metasedimentary, or are the granite gneiss, or are the amphibolite series rocks, then there the chances of the plate boundary interacting and the generating major earthquake is also not inevitable. That's why we need to have further studies, so that to know the impact and to know that how to control such seismicity in the region. There have been some other studies carried out by the Myanmar group. So the last color photo is taken from there, which also matches with us, which says that there are presence of some faults in the region which may have potential to generate the seismicity in the region. Yes, please. Next. So
We have
this
to
is one
conclude.
of the, yeah, I'll just conclude. I'll conclude. This is the last, this one. We'll not go ahead. So just to tell you that this is a zone wherein such compressive forces are very, very active, and we need to take the work in a greater detail so that to match it with the surfacial features and the deeper crustal structure, for which the government of Mizoram is very, very active. They are requesting us also to take up some work, and in very shortly we'll be taking up some work to conclude, so that to tell that what are the factors which have got major impact on the seismicity region. With this, I would like to thank to bear with me because there were some technical glitches in the presentation. Thank you very much, Amirji.
So thank you so much, sir, for nice presentation. It went off well, and the only question coming to my mind is that what are the chances of a big earthquake in Mizoram? So what are the chances of a big earthquake in Mizoram, or that part?
Chances of big earthquake, unless we take up some studies. Actually, we'll be putting our seismometers in the region, and as I told you that there are two possibilities are there. One is because the rocks are sedimentary rocks in the region, and as these sedimentary rocks, they are getting compressed. If the pore spaces are getting compressed, then there is a lot of scope, lot of such forces these rocks can withstand. But if, as per ONGC, if they are the border rocks and they are thin, say around 15-20 kilometers thin, sedimentary rocks are there which are just overlying the solid material, then the chances of tectonic earthquakes are more, and then we need to take some more precaution. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much for the nice presentation and finally managing the show.
Somehow it is raining so heavily outside.
So thank you so much once again. So now we are moving to Dr. Lal Biak Kima to discuss about the initiative taken by the local government, state government on various activities about the seismic activities.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, my topic is initiative of the government, Mizoram government initiative after the earthquake. Actually, in the wake of that 22nd June earthquake in Mizoram, especially in and around Champhai District, the government of Mizoram takes all its effort to comfort and relieve the suffering of the peoples, and by sending doctors and other relief package. Among others, Geology and Mineral Resources Government of Mizoram. It sends geologists to conduct earthquake studies. That studies include to observe the general effects of the earthquake in that area. Number two is to assess the damage pattern. And three, to evaluate intensity of the ground motions. And then from that intensity survey, that says isoseismal map is to be prepared. And then from that for this isoseismal map, GSI SOP is being used. And with that ground truth data collections, that intensity survey was done. Slide over. We'll see some of the slide. Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. Yes.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. For that study, methodology for that studies we apply is direct field investigation and interview with the affected people. And at some parts where there cannot be, where communication system is difficult, telephonic discussion is also used for data collections. And then for data collections, questionnaire is also prepared as per SOP of GSI. And from that questionnaire, and then we'll give some value as per MSK 64 scale. We prepare next. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. Here is the area where earthquake was taking place, and then up till now, some slight tremor is also going on. Yeah, here is the main affected area. The earthquake is concentrated in and around this area. Yeah, we have seen it with the date and time of the earthquake. This is the Champhai area, Champhai District, and then it includes this. The most affected parts are all are in this line. From this, yeah, from that one, then from the aerial photograph and imagery also, we delineated some lineaments. This is the lineament in and around that Champhai area, Kobung area, where earthquake was frequently most. These are the areas where most of the earthquake took place. We thought that these are the line west, southwest direction. These are the west, southwest direction, and this also. Apart from that, northwest trending lineament, a lot of northwest trending lineament also we can see it, and a major lineament is also there along this Trio River also, and this Tupui River. From the concentration of that earthquake activity, yeah, we thought that the movement of this lineament is the main cause of this earthquake. And then apart from that one, geological map is also prepared. And take, you know that this part, the eastern part of Mizoram, is the oldest lithological part in Mizoram. These are all barrel formations. And this yellowish part is the oldest one, Genam formations. And then another one is Laisong. And then another one, this one is Renji formations. And then this lithological contact is also controlled by this lineament. You see. Here, a lot of displacement is there in every of the lithology. Here in this part also. Because of that, we assume that these lineaments play a major part for earthquake in this area. And from that intensity survey, we prepare isoseismal map. Isoseismal map, and then the highest one is we put it as intensity scale 7, and the lowest one is the intensity scale 4. And then these are the highest intensity area. This one, and this one. And from field observations, we thought that beside the lineaments, the geological formation also play a part for earthquake intensity. You see in this area, we see mostly this Genam and Lysong formations. There are these formations are mainly bedded silty sandstone and shale. They are very compressed and very dense, whereas this Zokotar area, it is of loose formations, but intensity is also 7. This hard formation is intensity scale is 7, and this loose formation is also intensity 7. Why? The reason is that this earthquake seismic wave has gone past these dense formations, and when it reaches the loose formations, the seismic wave becomes slow down and disperse. It multiplies or it amplifies itself. Because of that, in this loose formation of Zokotar area, we see a lot of damage from that earthquake. And then that is our conclusions. But we need more study. As of now, because of this coronavirus, our Mizoram government is also trying to bring more experts from central government also. But due to this coronavirus, up till now they cannot come. And when the time this crisis time is over, we'll have a better chance for studying by expert. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Byak, for nice presentation. It's some real glimpses of your work there. So, questions. We had some information that the state government has taken a lot of initiatives. You have shown us some glimpses of your efforts by the state government. So we'll discuss towards the end if time is permitted. Now let's go to our next speaker, which is Professor Hemant B. Kaushik, who is Professor and Head Center for Education Technology at IIT Guwahati. And Professor Kaushik is basically a structural engineer, and he is the best person to take us, guide us what to and how to mitigate the impact of impending earthquake, as Shvalya sir was mentioning. So we have to take all these things. Interest of Professor Kaushik into the earthquake damage surveys as well. He has been, I'm not sure whether he has been there to Mizoram as yet, but definitely he has covered many earthquakes at national and international level. So as we were discussing in the beginning, in the introductory part, Kaushik sir was instrumental in doing damage survey in Manipur earthquake of 2016. So in addition to that, Kaushik sir is having a lot of experience of serving at national and international level. He is basically has received several honors and awards and medals from various organizations. He is a part of Bureau of Indian Standards, Bureau of Indian Standards on Earthquake Sectional Committee. He got some INA Young Associate since 2013. INA Young Engineer Award 2010. In addition to that, as I mentioned, he has done a lot of post-earthquake reconnaissance studies after Imphal earthquake, after Nepal earthquake 2015, then Sikkim earthquake 2011. So he is a member of various prestigious professional societies, including Engineering Research Institute, American Society of Civil Engineers. So there are a lot of things to say about Professor Kaushik, but I'm not taking much time. So I request Professor Kaushik to take over from here. So Kaushik sir, this is your turn to guide us through how to mitigate the impact of earthquakes in Mizoram, but entire canvas is Northeast India. So you know better than all of us that how to mitigate the impact of impending earthquake in that region. So it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amir, for introducing me. Well, I visited Mizoram twice. Last year there was a collapse of bridge near Aizawl, so I was invited to study the reasons why the bridge collapsed. So I went there, and then I visited this year again for a project meeting. I hope you can see my slides.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I will start with this interesting comparison, which actually shows a very unique nature of risk that the northeastern part of India is witnessing. On the left side, you see the seismic hazard map of India, where there are 4 seismic zones. All of us know it's prepared by the Bureau of Indian Standards. And on the right side, you see the landslide incidence map of India. Now, interesting point here is this is perhaps the only region in the country where you have huge landslides as well as biggest earthquakes India has seen in the history. Now, the rare combination of these events actually put this region into a further risk. Now, the landslides may be rainfall induced or it may be earthquake induced. But the main point that I'm saying here is that the soil, the strata is such that it is prone to landslides. Now that increases the risk too much. So as I am asked to, define some ways forward for seismic risk mitigation in northeastern part of India, these are my 8 points agenda for doing that. So first is, of course, the continuing education, training and awareness. It's a long-term process. I will discuss each of them in slightly more detail in the next slides. The second agenda, as per me, is improving the understanding of local geology and seismic hazard. The third point is improving construction practice, which involves the public, the engineers and the administrators. The fourth point is identifying resilient vernacular housing typologies which are prevalent in local villages in different regions, districts of Mizoram. Fifth is strengthening the existing infrastructure. Now this is very interesting because the whole world is actually working in this area, but how we can actually develop our own methods to strengthen our infrastructure, that is very important. Then developing strengthening building bylaws is very important for earthquake safety and reducing the risk. Financing projects that can address local problems. So this is what I feel is missing presently somehow. We'll discuss in detail more. Taking clues from existing programs. So there are several programs already existing. So we can actually take a clue, take help from them. The first point is the continuing education, training and awareness. So this is one of the most important points in seismic risk mitigation in any part. Now, it should be a long-term, continuous, progressive strategy. We should not think that we have already trained our engineers, we have already underwent so many programs, so there's no need for any more training. But then my point is we have to first generate awareness in the public by creating these public awareness programs on radios in schools and colleges. So the State Disaster Management Authority can actually conduct the regular earthquake drills. I hope it's already been conducted in many parts of Mizoram. If it is not, then this is one very useful way in which we can create awareness. Such drills can be conducted regularly in every city, village. Another important point in generating the public awareness is by translation of earthquake safety documents in local languages. There are so many documents available in English and in some local languages like Hindi and Marathi, even Assamese, but I'm not sure if some earthquake safety documents are available in Mizo language. So one such very important document written for normal public, non-engineer, public user who are not engineers is earthquake tips. So most of us engineers take help from these earthquake tips, but then if it is translated, they will help the public also. Then this is what I was mentioning, that every engineer, maybe government or private, they must update their knowledge regularly. In some other countries, they have a minimum mandatory program that every engineer has to do in every year. For example, 2 weeks of program every year or 40 hours or 2 short-term certification courses every year is mandatory for engineers. But somehow in India it is missing. We have certain training programs regularly, but then it's not mandatory. It's also not very formal in nature. So we can actually reward such engineers who undergo such trainings by publicizing, by increments in their salaries, etc. Third point is also very important, that we have to now look for higher studies of the engineers working in government as well as private companies. For example, they can do their masters, their PhDs from IITs. We can have some MOUs with the Mizoram government. Just to give you an example, a very senior engineer of about 60 years of age just completed PhD from IIT Guwahati. He's working in Arunachal Pradesh. So 10 years back, he completed his MTech and then he completed his PhD. So, we have to reward the engineers for such higher studies. The second important point that the other speakers have already highlighted is to improve our understanding of local geology and seismic hazard. So we need a lot of data in order to improve our understanding. So we need to instrument. We need a lot of instrumentation in this region. In fact, the instrumentation in the entire country is very poor. But since this region is subjected to so much of seismic activity, we have to instrument this region. We need to conduct geological field studies as well as simulations so that we can find out the critical locations that have high potential of landslides and we can avoid them. The corrective measures can be adopted if we know such critical locations in advance. We need to plan the geotechnical studies to evaluate the soil properties, which are very important for seismic safety of structures. What we have observed that our geotechnical understanding of local region is very poor because of many reasons, like manpower, the equipment required, instrumentation. So unless we have good understanding of the geotechnical aspects, it's very difficult to understand how structures will behave. Ground improvement techniques can be implemented if we have these properties, if this data available. Then, of course, the assessment of seismic hazard, which is again very important to understand the seismicity and for improved seismic hazard maps. If you need to find out the seismic vulnerability and risk, this is what we have to do, assess the seismic hazard. Improving the construction practice with the involvement of all the stakeholders is very important activity for seismic risk mitigation. So we need to train the contractors, the masons and the laborers, and who will train them? So the first point that I discussed was training of these engineers. So continuous education of these engineers. So these trained engineers in turn will train the contractors, masons and laborers. and we can reward the best masons, best laborers to create more awareness so that people have some motivation to undergo the training. Ensuring good material quality is of course very important for any structural better performance of structures. So we have to mandatorily ask all these site engineers to test the material before any construction. Then we have to look for the local sustainable materials, because we can always find some better material developed locally. Just one example is locally available bamboo, which is very sustainable, which can be very easily used in lieu of certain other materials. I will discuss this point later. Then regular checks by the engineers, enforcement of codal provisions, and we have to reward the best construction just to motivate people. Fourth point is identifying resilient local vernacular housing types. Some years back, NDMA granted a project to several IITs to find out what are the different building typologies in India for their seismic vulnerability assessment. And I'm showing you here two types that were identified in ISOL. So first is of course reinforced concrete building, but you can see how irregular that building is, how poorly configured that building is. On the right side is a timber house, but then again the configuration is very poor because it has such long columns at the bottom, and we cannot simply call them columns. These are some members somehow managing the weight of the house. So a similar study was carried out in Assam for Assam type housing. These are the houses which are there for hundreds of years. They have performed really well. So in 2019, we carried out some study on Assam type housing, and let me show you what are the features of these houses that we are interested in. So this is a single wall or a single panel or a frame of the Assam type house, and you can see here that the framing is timber, but the walling is something else. It is called ikra panel. And these are bamboo shoots which are woven together and then plastered. Now the beauty of this house is that it has so many flexible joints, like this is joint A at the bottom, left bottom. So the vertical timber is connected to the pedestal using only these steel bolts and using these steel flats. This joint B on the right side, and just see the difference between joint A and joint B, where the steel flats are oriented in different manner. And similarly, there are all these joints which are very flexible, which actually imparts flexibility to the structure. So we thought, let us test this structure, test each of these joints in our laboratory to know why these buildings are performed in such a beautiful way. So each of these joints were tested individually, and then we also tested the entire house, a single room house of Assam type structure. So this is a full-scale house tested in structural engineering laboratory at IIT Guwahati. So this is a dynamic test. You can see under a real earthquake how this house performed, and I'm showing you the video now. And if you can find out a single crack in the house, I'll be interested to know. All right, so I am sure you did not find any crack there. It was a real ground motion that has peak ground acceleration of 1g at the base. So since we could not fail that house on a shake table under a real ground motion, we thought, let us try to fail this house by applying an equivalent load at the top of the house. So this is again the same house, but the loading is now quasi-static, that is applied at the top. You can see the actuator connected at the top of the structure. And I will now show you again this test video, which is fast forward mode. But just try to see what happens to the vertical alignment of all these timber joints. And at the bottom, you can see the displacement level that is applied at the top. So presently it is 25 mm, and you can see that people are moving so fast, so it is done in a fast forward manner. Otherwise, the entire test took around 3.5 hours to complete. So this is, we are at 65 mm, 70 mm displacement at the top, and you can see the only damage that you can see here is at the interface of the timber and the brick wall and the ICRA wall. So this is now 110 mm. Now you can see some damage in the ICRA panel as well as the timber frame. Now we have reached about 140 mm. So this is 150 mm. That is about 6 inches of lateral displacement. Now generally earthquakes don't subject the houses to such high displacement at the top. This is only a single story house. But then you can see even at 200 mm lateral displacement, some cracks appear in the ICRA panel. The entire frame is separated from the house, but then there is no collapse of the house. Now we have reached about 240 mm, 250 mm. So that is the reason that, the primary reason that these houses have performed so nicely is their flexible joints. So if we have done it for Assam, we can of course find out similar structures that are there in Mizoram. So if we can improve the local typology for smaller dwellings, because RC buildings are not required for everybody, for every structure, because they need engineering judgment and supervision at every stage. So our idea is to actually prefer local typologies, local type of structures for single family dwellings to reduce the seismic risk for RC buildings. Now, fifth point is strengthening. So again, we have to actually develop very simple and inexpensive methods to strengthen, because there are many expensive methods available. People are there who can actually retrofit your houses, but then they will charge lakhs and lakhs of rupees. So DST again sponsored a study at IIT Guwahati to develop low cost, very inexpensive method of strengthening unreinforced masonry. So I'm again showing you a video of full scale house of a masonry building, and let us see without retrofitting. There is no retrofitting done here, and let us see how it behaves. Now you can see, since it's a masonry building, it is not flexible. So you can see the movement of the people, you can see the movement of the house at the top, but then the total deformation is very less. So now this is the displacement at about 20 mm, and you can see already a lot of cracks in the house because it's only unreinforced. There is no reinforcement there in the house. And you can see the top portion of the house is already separated from the bottom portion. And it only failed at a displacement of about 30-35 mm compared to 250 mm in case of Assam type house. Now let us see another video where we actually used surface mounted steel bands for strengthening. So these the brown color bands that you can see on the building, these are steel bands, simple steel bands that are mounted using nuts and bolts over the walls on both the faces. And let us see how this building behaved. So this again, you can see we have reached 30 mm, at which the unreinforced masonry building failed. And it is performing really well. You can see failure falling of the brick units, but it doesn't matter because it is able to actually sustain the loading. And the beauty of this house is, before failure of the masonry, there was a failure of the steel flats. Okay, so that means the load is transferred to the steel flats. So the method is extremely cost effective. It can be implemented very quickly without much disturbance to the residents and outsiders. It does not require expensive equipment or skilled manpower to install. We can do it ourselves with the help of some labor. It does not increase the seismic mass of the structure, which is very important for seismic design. It does not increase the lateral stiffness. It increases the lateral strength and ductility, and we can very easily replace these steel flats. So we have to develop similar retrofitting solutions for other types of seismically vulnerable structures in Mizoram, let us say. It is quite possible to develop local, I'll call this system as a locally developed strengthening system. Then we have to strengthen or develop the building bylaws, because it is very important to enforce these bylaws for reducing the seismic risk. We have to integrate them with the Indian standards. Again, I'm saying the local problems must be addressed, because the seismic codes are designed in New Delhi. I mean, of course, people are there from all parts of India, but then the local problems faced by Mizoram should be there in the local bylaws. And then we have to be very careful in land use planning. We have to include different hill building configurations in such documents, and certain clauses and bylaws which are not there, we have to develop. For example, design and construction of guidelines for local building types, foundation detailing in hilly terrain, step construction practice, the retrofitting of buildings on hills. So all these is required to be developed. The local government should finance small projects that should address the local problems. For example, how to improve the structural performance on hill slopes, how to find out sustainable materials for such construction on hill slopes. The slope stability analysis, the landslides encountered in Mizoram should be addressed by financing certain projects to universities, to institutes. The non-structural issues, the suitability of different building typologies which are already there. So just to give you an example, Tripura government actually gave, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change gave us a project to study Tripura bamboo housing, and we are actually studying it presently. And then Assam government gave us a project to find out retrofitting solutions for open ground story buildings in Guwahati. So we are involved in many such local projects, but then the number of such projects are very less. We have to somehow improve them. So this is one example of the earthquake resistance of bamboo houses, the project given to us. So here in the project, a very indigenous technique was developed to treat the bamboo before we can use it in construction. And in the project, we are developing different types of joints so that they remain functional during earthquakes. And we'll construct these houses, and the final idea is to test these houses like we did for Assam Take housing, and then develop the guidelines. The last point is taking clues from existing programs. For example, this National Seismic Risk Mitigation Program, NSRMP, is a program that consider presently 9 states. So out of these 9, 4 are from the northeastern region. So Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, and Tripura, they are there, but somehow Mizoram was missed. And I hope Mizoram should be a part of that exercise with the help of the State Disaster Management Authority. The proposed activities of NSRMP is very similar to what is actually required to reduce the seismic risk. Basically, to strengthen risk capabilities, risk assessment capabilities, raising public awareness, strengthening of building codes and land use regulations, piloting retrofitting of critical infrastructure, and developing risk financing framework. So if we can link somehow Mizoram with NSRMP and the remaining states of northeastern country, I'm sure we'll be able to reduce the seismic risk, and we can mitigate the seismic risk. But then, like I said in my first slide, it is a long-term solution. It takes time. We should not expect that solution will be there next year or in 2 years. If we can sustain our efforts for next 10 years, then I'm sure we'll be able to mitigate the seismic risk. So thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Professor Kaushik. It's a wonderful presentation highlighting all those essential requirements for risk mitigation in the Northeast region. It's nice to see the experiments you have already carried out in the structural engineering lab on traditional or vernacular types. That's very repetitive. So thank you so much for the nice presentation. So just one query: have you carried out some studies on vernacular housing in Mizoram as well? Because you have covered Assam type and some local construction practices in other states, but what about the Mizoram?
We have not yet carried out, because it requires some efforts, in the sense that although that NDMA study was carried out in 2013 to study some vernacular housing systems in Mizoram, but then we could not visit local villages at that time because of the time frame. So what we did at that time was just studying the housing systems in Aizawl. So if we can get some good data about what are the local systems, local housing systems in Mizoram, then of course we can plan such a study for that also.
Yeah, considering the situation in Aizawl, how do you rate the level of vulnerability there?
I mean, you don't need an answer to that question. It's very high. Vulnerability is very
Yeah.
high, primarily because of the terrain.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the construction practice is almost similar in the entire northeastern part.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Professor Kaushik. It's a wonderful presentation, and I hope the participants have enjoyed this. At least I enjoyed your discussion and the presentation. It's giving clear direction. So now ball shifted to Mizoram team, especially Lalbek Kima sir. Are there some takeaway from Professor Kaushik's presentation to Mizoram? You have to unmute yourself.
Pardon, sir. I don't get what you say.
No, with Professor Kaushik giving a wide variety of prescription for earthquake risk mitigation for the entire region, not only Mizoram. Are there some takeaway for Mizoram from his presentation?
I don't know, sir. Actually.
Okay. Because lot of activities are there which state government has to take the experts like Professor Kaushik into confidence and involve them in studying at least those traditional rural housing.
Yeah.
Unless we invest in the studies, like he has rightly mentioned that how strong is that Assam type housing is. So similarly, we have to come and sanction some studies of local vernacular housing prevailing in Mizoram, so that they can experiment in their labs and come out certain solutions for improvement as well. Low cost improvement, he has shown that as well.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Regarding that, for constructions of houses, from that our field investigations, we suggest that strong Assam type wooden structure will be the best for that area. Actually, for the whole of Mizoram also, it may also be better than cement structure also.
Yeah. So just a general query: how much percentage of housing in the rural areas are Assam type? Are there Assam type houses?
Yeah, most of the houses are Assam type. Actually, it may be around 80%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what are the plans of state government to mitigate the risk, or especially in this event of Champhai events, in light of Champhai events? Are there some specific plans of state government to mitigate the impact of earthquakes?
No, as of now, there is no specific plan. Actually, our government is trying to get some experts from central government, and then as per their studies and as per their recommendations, the government may take decisions. Hello?
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this, Dr. Dinpuya, Lal Dinpuya. What is the average depth of various geological features in Mizoram? This was one of the questions raised by one of the participants.
You don't know actually that you need to take a borehole and some site only that Champhai District you don't have a data till then.
Okay. So are you planning to study that as well?
Yeah, I hope if possible you can do.
Okay. So thank you again for nice presentation and discussion. So Professor Kaushik, last closing remarks from your side so that we can go and close the event of today. Professor Kaushik.
Yes, so it was actually a very nice effort from NIDM to organize such a webinar. The most important point, if you remember my presentation, there are 3 stars, is the public awareness and the training. These are some of the most important points. So it is very important actually to have such webinars, and my sincere thanks to Professor Wali also, who initiated it, just like you informed. And the presentations done by Mr. Dinkuai and Mr. Lalbia Krima, this of course shows the insight of the things that are there in Mizoram. Because from outside we can only talk, but these are the people who actually know what is there inside. And I'm actually really glad to know that in villages of Mizoram, there are majority of the buildings are Assam type housing. But I'm also interested to know what are the differences in these buildings from the Assam type real houses that are there in Assam. I'm sure there will be some changes, there will be some differences. So those are the things that we need to study. And so thank you again for inviting me on this interesting webinar.
And Professor Kaushik and the other two panelists, there is a lot of demand from Aizawl Municipal Corporation to organize some engineers capacity building programs. So we may be taking up some more initiative from NIDM side, like your first point, to build the capacity and to raise at least the awareness level among the engineers. So we are taking up coming up with some more similar activities targeting Mizoram, but with a focus of the Northeast India, because the entire region requires a lot of capacity building initiatives. We have been coming to that region, but due to this Corona times, we have not come for quite some time. Maybe the last year, I visited once or twice, thrice to organize these programs, but that is the limitation. That and you see that it takes a lot of effort to organize a program sitting in Delhi and coordinating with people like you and people in Aizawl and in Shillong. So definitely, but thank you so much for sparing valuable time to all four speakers, which are able to justify their presence. And as you rightly mentioned, Professor Devesh Walia is definitely one of the active participants of NIDM team. Now I hope we will take a lot of help from you as well in organizing various activities, and we will team up with you as well. So thank you so much for joining our webinar, and we'll definitely going to trouble you again on some important issues, and I will discuss with you that, how to go ahead from here. And thank you, Dr. Laldinia, for a nice presentation. As Professor Kaushik has mentioned, that you had shown us some glimpses of what had taken place in Mizoram in the Champhai District. And thank you so much, Dr. Vyak, for making that presentation, that government effort, and your report. I tried to locate here in the central government that report, but I could not. But definitely, I will request you to share that report as well if you can. And Dr. Lalin Puya, you also can share your report and presentation so that we can make it wide publicity of the efforts made by your team and the state government. Definitely, a lot of effort has gone by the state government in facilitating all these efforts. And as Professor Kaushik mentioned, that this is the first interaction, at least from NIDM side, to go and look into those that small window of Mizoram and finding some solutions. So we will keep on doing our bit of efforts in trying to mitigate the impact of impending earthquakes, not only in Mizoram but the entire region. And thank you so much to the entire panel of experts, especially Professor Kaushik, Professor Devesh Walia, who is the organizing partner as well, Lalin Priya, and Dr. Byak. So thank you so much once again for sparing the time and a valuable presentation and comments. So we are definitely organizing few more activities and webinars and maybe a training program slightly later on in coming times. So thank you so much for sparing the time and making nice presentations. So with this, let's close this today's webinar. I hope everyone has enjoyed. All the participants, thank you so much for sustaining the good interest in the webinar. I also take this opportunity to thank our executive director for allowing us to organize this event. Executive Director Major General Bindal Saab is always very kind, and he is always helpful in promoting all such activities. So this is one of the need of the time, in my opinion. So we are able to deliver this event. my team at NIDM, especially Yogita from back of the screen, she's managing the entire show. So thank you so much, Yogita, and thank you to ED sir for allowing us to organize this event. Thank you to all participants, panelists once again, and thank you to all for nice presentations and discussion. So thank you once again, and let's close the event. Thank you.